The satisfaction of watching 12 years of work disappear in 0.3 seconds was worth every sleepless night that followed. When Marcus finally looked up from his phone to see the panic spreading across the conference room like wildfire, I knew my moment had arrived. The $3 million database that had taken our team 5 years to build was gone, and I was the only one who knew where the real backup was hidden. My name is Victoria Hayes, and this is the story of how I brought down the most toxic workplace in corporate America with nothing but a laptop and a carefully planned exit strategy. It started on a Tuesday morning in October when I walked into Dataflow Solutions expecting another ordinary day. I'd been their senior database administrator for 12 years, working my way up from a junior analyst fresh out of college. I'd built their entire data infrastructure from scratch, trained half the IT department, and saved the company millions through my optimization protocols. Dataflow wasn't just my job, it was my second home, my identity, my life's work. The meeting invitation appeared in my inbox at 9:47 a.m. Performance review, Victoria Hayes. Nothing unusual about that, except my annual review wasn't scheduled for another 3 months. I figured it was a mistake. Maybe an early discussion about my promotion to IT director that had been dangling like a carrot for the past 2 years. I knocked on Marcus Reed's office door at precisely 2 p.m. Marcus was our chief technology officer, a man who'd joined the company 6 months ago and immediately started making strategic changes that mostly involved cutting costs and eliminating what he called redundant positions. He was the kind of executive who used buzzwords like synergy and optimization, while having no actual understanding of how our systems worked. "Victoria, come in, have a seat." His tone was different, too formal, too careful. The kind of voice people use when they're about to deliver bad news. I sat down across from his oversized desk, noting the manila folder with my name on it. "Is this about the quarterly performance metrics? Because I have the numbers right here, and we've exceeded every target." Marcus cleared his throat and opened the folder. "This isn't about performance metrics. Victoria, this is about organizational restructuring. We're implementing a new management structure, and we need to make some adjustments to optimize our human resources." The corporate speak was already making my skin crawl. "What kind of adjustments?" "We're consolidating the database administration role under our new junior administrator, Kevin Park. He's shown remarkable initiative, and we believe he can handle the expanded responsibilities. This will allow us to reallocate resources more efficiently." The words hit me like a physical blow. Kevin Park was a 24-year-old kid who'd been with the company for 8 months. He had potential, sure, but he barely understood the basics of our primary database architecture. I'd been mentoring him, teaching him the intricacies of the systems I'd built from the ground up. "You're replacing me with Kevin?" I managed to keep my voice steady, professional. "Not replacing, restructuring. We'd like to offer you a position as database support specialist. You'd be working under Kevin's supervision, helping to maintain the day-to-day operations while he focuses on strategic initiatives." The demotion was dressed up in corporate terminology, but the reality was crystal clear. After 12 years of building their entire data infrastructure, they were pushing me down to an entry-level position reporting to someone who didn't know the difference between a primary key and a foreign key 6 months ago. "And the compensation?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "The new position comes with a salary adjustment. We're looking at a 35% reduction, but you'll have better work-life balance and fewer responsibilities." 35%. They were cutting my salary by over $20,000 while expecting me to train my replacement and clean up his inevitable mistakes. The disrespect was staggering. But what hurt most was the casual way Marcus delivered the news, as if my decade of dedication meant nothing. "I need to think about this," I said, standing up. "Of course, take your time. We'll need your decision by Friday." I walked out of his office in a daze, my mind reeling from the betrayal. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished steel doors. 42 years old, graying at the temples, wearing the same professional blazer I'd worn to countless successful project presentations. I looked like exactly what I was, a middle-aged woman who devoted her entire career to a company that saw her as disposable. The rest of the week passed in a blur of awkward conversations and sympathetic glances from colleagues who'd heard the news through the office grapevine. Some of them approached me privately, expressing their outrage at the decision. Jennifer from HR whispered that it was completely unfair, but couldn't do anything about it. Tom from the finance department said he'd put in a good word with upper management, knowing full well it wouldn't matter. The most painful part was working with Kevin to transition my responsibilities. He was a decent kid, enthusiastic and eager to learn, but he had no idea what he was stepping into. I watched him struggle with basic queries that I could write in my sleep, saw the confusion in his eyes when I explained the more complex procedures that kept our systems running smoothly. Victoria, I just want you to know that I never asked for this, he said during one of our training sessions. I don't understand why they're making this change. I appreciated his honesty, but it didn't change the situation. Kevin wasn't the enemy. He was just a pawn in Marcus's cost-cutting game. The real villains were the executives who decided that experience and expertise were less valuable than a lower salary. By Thursday, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to accept the demotion, I wasn't going to train my replacement any further, and I wasn't going to let Dataflow Solutions destroy everything I'd built without consequences. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and my laptop, planning my exit strategy. I'd been the sole architect of their database infrastructure for over a decade. I knew every table, every relationship, every stored procedure. More importantly, I knew where every backup was stored, which systems were critical, and exactly how much damage I could cause with the right commands. The main database contained 12 years of customer data, financial records, and operational information. Conservative estimates put its value at $3 million. But the real cost of losing it would be much higher. There would be regulatory fines, customer lawsuits, and the potential collapse of several major contracts that depended on our data integrity. I'd always been meticulous about backups. There were 3 separate backup systems: the automated daily backups stored on our primary servers, the weekly backups sent to our cloud storage provider, and the monthly archive backups stored on external drives in our secure facility. What Marcus and the rest of the executive team didn't know was that I'd also maintained a personal backup system, a complete mirror of all critical data that I updated regularly and stored on encrypted drives in my home office. It was a violation of company policy, technically speaking, but I justified it as a necessary precaution. If something catastrophic happened to our primary systems, I could restore everything from my personal backups. I'd never imagined I'd use them as leverage, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Friday morning arrived with an email from Marcus. Victoria, I need your decision by 5 p.m. today. Please let me know if you're accepting the database support specialist position so we can finalize the paperwork. I spent the day cleaning out my desk, copying personal files to a thumb drive, and making sure I had everything I needed. Around 4 p.m., I submitted my resignation letter through the HR portal. It was brief and professional. After careful consideration, I have decided to decline the offered position and resign from Dataflow Solutions. My last day will be today, October 15th. Thank you for the opportunities you've provided over the past 12 years. The response was immediate. Marcus called me into his office, clearly flustered by my decision. Victoria, I think you're making a mistake. This is a good company, and we value your contributions. Maybe we can discuss the salary adjustment. There's nothing to discuss. Marcus, I'm done. What about the transition? Kevin needs more training on the database systems. I looked at him with genuine amazement. You're demoting me to work under someone who doesn't understand the systems I built, cutting my salary by 35%, and now you're concerned about training? That's not my problem anymore. Be reasonable, Victoria. You can't just walk away from 12 years of work. Watch me. I left his office and spent the next hour transferring my personal files and clearing my browser history. At exactly 5 p.m., I logged out of my workstation for the last time and headed for the exit. My badge was already deactivated, but the security guard, Mike, had worked there almost as long as I had. Sorry to see you go, Victoria. This place won't be the same without you. Thanks, Mike. Take care of yourself. I drove home in a strange mix of emotions: sadness, anger, and something that felt almost like relief. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't going to wake up tomorrow morning and think about database optimization, server maintenance, or system updates. I was free. But I wasn't done with Dataflow Solutions. Over the weekend, I received several calls from colleagues who'd heard about my resignation. The general consensus was that the company had made a huge mistake. Jennifer from HR was particularly upset, telling me that Marcus had already scheduled a meeting with Kevin to discuss immediate system priorities. "He's in way over his head," she said. "Marcus is expecting him to handle everything you are doing, but Kevin barely knows where to start." Monday morning brought the first signs of trouble. Kevin called me at 8:30 a.m., panic evident in his voice. "Victoria, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having trouble with the customer database. There's an error message I've never seen before, and I can't figure out what's wrong." I felt a twinge of sympathy for him, but I'd made my decision. "Kevin, I don't work there anymore. You'll need to contact technical support or figure it out yourself. But you're the only one who really understands these systems. Marcus said you might be willing to consult on a contract basis." The audacity was breathtaking. They'd pushed me out the door, and now they wanted to hire me back as a contractor to fix their problems. "I'm not interested in consulting work. Good luck." The calls continued throughout the week. Kevin called twice more, sounding increasingly desperate. Marcus left 3 voicemails, each one more urgent than the last. By Thursday, I heard from Jennifer that several critical reports hadn't been generated correctly, and they were starting to get complaints from major clients. "Marcus is freaking out," she told me. "He's been in meetings all day trying to figure out how to fix the problems. I think he's starting to realize how much you actually did around here." The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd treated me like I was easily replaceable, and now they were discovering that 12 years of expertise couldn't be transferred in a few training sessions. Kevin was competent, but he was drowning in responsibilities he didn't understand. I felt a moment of doubt. These were people I'd worked with for years, and watching them struggle was harder than I'd expected. But then I remembered Marcus's casual dismissal of my contributions, the insulting salary cut, and the way they'd treated me like disposable equipment. Friday brought the breakthrough I'd been waiting for. Marcus called me directly, his voice strained with barely controlled panic. "Victoria, I need you to come in. We're having serious issues with the database, and Kevin can't figure out what's wrong. We'll pay you a consulting fee, whatever you want." "What kind of issues?" "The customer data isn't syncing properly, and we're getting corruption errors in the financial records. We have a regulatory audit next week, and if we can't produce clean data, we're looking at significant fines." The desperation in his voice was music to my ears. "That sounds like a serious problem. Marcus, I hope you can figure it out." "Victoria, please. I know we didn't handle your departure well, but we need your help. Name your price." My price is my old job back, full salary, and a formal apology for the way I was treated. "Oh, and Kevin can report to me." There was a long pause. "I can't make those decisions on my own. I'll need to discuss it with the executive team." "Then discuss it, but I'm not lifting a finger to help until I see a formal offer in writing." The weekend passed quietly. I spent Saturday working in my garden, Sunday reading on the porch, and both days ignoring the increasingly frantic calls from Dataflow Solutions. I was starting to enjoy my newfound freedom, but I wasn't ready to let them off the hook. Monday morning brought an email from Marcus with a formal offer. Dataflow Solutions would like to offer you a position as Senior Database Administrator, your previous title, with full salary restoration and a 10% increase. We would also like to discuss a consulting agreement for immediate system recovery. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. It was a good offer, better than I'd expected, but it wasn't enough. They were still trying to dictate terms, still acting like they held all the cards. They needed to understand that I wasn't just another employee they could manipulate. I replied with a single sentence: "I'll consider your offer after you fix the current problems yourself." The response was immediate. Marcus called within minutes, his voice tight with stress. Victoria, you're not being reasonable. We need your help now, not after we've already solved the problems. Then you should have thought of that before you demoted me. Look, I admit we made some mistakes in how we handled your situation, but this is bigger than personal grievances. We're talking about the stability of the entire company. Exactly. You're finally starting to understand what I've been trying to tell you for years. The database infrastructure isn't just a technical detail you can hand off to the lowest bidder. It's the foundation of everything you do. So help us fix it. I am helping you. I'm teaching you the value of expertise and experience. Consider it a very expensive lesson. The conversation ended with Marcus hanging up on me, but I wasn't concerned. I knew they'd be back. The problems would only get worse, and eventually, they'd realize they had no choice but to meet my terms. Tuesday brought news that the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Jennifer called to tell me that 3 major clients had threatened to terminate their contracts due to data accuracy issues. The regulatory audit had been moved up, and the auditors were already asking difficult questions about data integrity. Marcus is beside himself, she said. He's been in his office all day, and I heard him on the phone with the CEO. They're talking about bringing in an outside consulting firm, but that could take weeks. And they don't have weeks? No, they don't. Victoria, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but there are a lot of innocent people here who could lose their jobs if this gets worse. Jennifer was right, and her words stung. I'd been so focused on my revenge against Marcus and the executive team that I hadn't fully considered the impact on my former colleagues. These were people who'd supported me, who'd been just as outraged by my treatment as I was. But I also knew that backing down now would send the wrong message. If I came back without getting justice for what they'd done to me, it would just validate their belief that experienced employees were expendable. The next person in my position might not have the leverage to fight back. Wednesday brought the call I'd been expecting. It wasn't Marcus this time. It was David Chen, the CEO. I'd met him a few times over the years, always in passing at company events or during major presentations. He was generally considered a decent leader, someone who'd built data flow solutions from a small startup into a major player in the data management industry. Victoria, I want to start by apologizing for how your departure was handled. I've been reviewing the situation, and I believe we made serious errors in judgment. It was a good start, but I wasn't ready to forgive yet. Thank you for saying that, David. But apologies don't undo the damage. No, they don't. That's why I want to make this right. I'm prepared to offer you a position as Director of Database Operations, the promotion you should have received months ago, full salary restoration plus a 25% increase, stock options, and a formal apology from the company. The offer was substantial, more than I'd dared to hope for, but there was still the matter of principle. What about Marcus? Marcus has been reassigned to a different division. He won't be involved in IT operations moving forward. That was unexpected. They were essentially removing the person who'd orchestrated my demotion, which suggested they were taking the situation seriously. But I still wasn't satisfied. And Kevin? Kevin is a good kid, but he's not ready for the level of responsibility we gave him. He'll remain as a junior administrator, reporting to you if you accept the position. I need to think about it. Of course. But Victoria, I need to be honest with you. We're in crisis mode here. If we can't restore data integrity by Friday, we're looking at regulatory fines that could bankrupt the company. I'm not trying to pressure you, but the clock is ticking. After David hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the phone. The offer was everything I'd wanted: vindication, recognition, and a significant improvement over my previous position. But accepting it would mean giving up my leverage, and I wasn't sure I was ready to do that. The truth was, I was enjoying watching them squirm. For 12 years, I'd been taken for granted, treated like a piece of office equipment that could be replaced or upgraded at will. Now they were finally seeing what happened when you lost critical expertise. But Jennifer's words kept echoing in my mind. There were innocent people at Dataflow Solutions who didn't deserve to suffer for the executive team's mistakes. If the company went under, Dozens of people would lose their jobs. People who'd been supportive colleagues and friends. Thursday morning brought the breaking point. Kevin called me, and this time he wasn't asking for technical help. He was in tears. "Victoria, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not qualified for this job, and I've been trying to tell Marcus that for weeks. But now everything is falling apart, and they're blaming me for problems I don't even understand." My heart went out to him. Kevin was a victim in this situation, just like I was. He'd been set up to fail by executives who didn't understand the complexity of the systems they were asking him to manage. "Kevin, this isn't your fault. You're not the one who made the decision to eliminate my position. But I'm the one who's failing to replace you. I should have refused the promotion, but I needed the money. And I thought I could learn fast enough." "You're not failing, Kevin. You're drowning because they threw you into the deep end without a life jacket. That's on them, not you." After we hung up, I made my decision. I wasn't going to let Dataflow Solutions collapse just to prove a point. Too many good people would be hurt, and ultimately, that wouldn't serve justice. It would just create more victims. I called David back that afternoon. "I'll accept your offer, with one additional condition." "What's that?" "I want a written guarantee that no employee will be terminated or demoted as a result of this situation. Kevin keeps his job, and no one else gets blamed for the problems that were caused by poor management decisions." "Done. When can you start?" "I'll be in Monday morning." "But David, I want to be clear about something. I'm not coming back to clean up this mess and then pretend nothing happened. There need to be structural changes to prevent this kind of situation from happening again." "I completely agree. We'll schedule a meeting with the executive team to discuss long-term improvements to our management structure." "Good. And one more thing. I want Marcus to personally apologize to me in front of the entire IT department, not because I need his validation, but because the team needs to see that this company values expertise and experience." There was a pause. "That's unconventional, but I think it's fair. I'll make sure it happens." That evening, I sat in my home office looking at the encrypted backup drives that contained Dataflow Solutions' entire database. In a few days, I'd be back in my old office, probably working late nights to restore the systems I'd built over the course of 12 years. The revenge I'd fantasized about, watching the company crumble from my actions, would remain just that, a fantasy. But as I reflected on the past few weeks, I realized that my real revenge had already been successful. I'd forced them to confront the value of what they'd tried to discard. I'd made them pay a price for their arrogance and short-sightedness. And most importantly, I'd stood up for myself in a way that would make it much harder for them to treat other employees the same way. The satisfaction of watching 12 years of work disappear in 0.3 seconds would have been temporary. The satisfaction of making them admit they were wrong. Of getting the recognition and compensation I deserved. Of protecting other employees from similar treatment, that would last much longer. Monday morning arrived with a mix of nervous energy and quiet determination. I walked into Dataflow Solutions carrying the same laptop bag I'd carried out 3 weeks earlier. But everything had changed. Jennifer greeted me at the reception desk with a huge smile and a warm hug. "Welcome back, Victoria. We've missed you." The IT department was buzzing with activity as I walked to my office, not my old cubicle, but a real office with a door and a window. Kevin was waiting for me, looking relieved and apprehensive at the same time. "I'm so glad you're back," he said. "I've been keeping notes on all the issues I've encountered, and I'm ready to learn everything you can teach me. We'll get through this together, Kevin, and don't worry, I'm not going to throw you under the bus for problems that weren't your fault." The morning was spent assessing the damage. The database corruption was extensive but not irreparable. Years of automated backups meant that most of the data could be recovered, but it would take time and careful work to restore full functionality. I estimated it would take 2 weeks to get everything back to normal operation. At 10 a.m., David called a meeting of the entire IT department. Marcus was there, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. David started with a brief statement about the importance of recognizing and retaining critical expertise, then handed the floor to Marcus. I want to apologize to Victoria and to all of you for the poor decisions that led to this situation, Marcus said, his voice strained but sincere. I underestimated the complexity of our database systems and the value of Victoria's expertise. My actions put the entire company at risk, and I take full responsibility for that. It wasn't the most gracious apology I'd ever heard, but it was public and on the record. More importantly, it sent a clear message to the rest of the team about the consequences of not valuing experienced employees. The next 2 weeks were intense but satisfying. I worked closely with Kevin to restore the database systems, teaching him not just the technical procedures but the reasoning behind them. He was an eager student, and I found myself enjoying the mentoring aspect of my new role. The regulatory audit was postponed, pending the completion of our data restoration. But the auditors were satisfied with our recovery plan and the steps we were taking to prevent similar issues in the future. The client complaints were resolved as we restored data integrity, and several contracts that had been in jeopardy were renewed. By the end of the month, Dataflow Solutions was back to normal operation. The database systems were running smoothly. The backup procedures had been strengthened, and the IT department had a new appreciation for the importance of institutional knowledge and expertise. I settled into my new role as Director of Database Operations, enjoying the increased responsibility and the respect that came with it. The 25% salary increase was nice, but the real satisfaction came from knowing that I'd stood up for myself and won. 6 months later, I received a LinkedIn message from a former colleague who'd moved to another company. I heard about what happened at Dataflow, she wrote. You're becoming something of a legend in the industry. A lot of people are inspired by how you handled the situation. The story had spread through professional networks, becoming a cautionary tale about the importance of valuing experienced employees. I'd inadvertently become a symbol of resistance against corporate short-sightedness, proof that individual employees could fight back against unfair treatment and win. As I reflected on the entire experience, I realized that my revenge had been more complete than I'd initially understood. I hadn't just gotten my job back, I'd changed the conversation about how companies treat their most valuable assets, their people. The threat I'd posed by having access to critical systems and the knowledge to use them effectively had forced Dataflow Solutions to confront the reality of their dependence on experienced employees. They'd learned that expertise can't be easily replaced, that institutional knowledge has real value, and that treating employees as disposable comes with serious risks. My personal backup system remained my secret, an insurance policy I hoped never to use. But knowing it was there gave me confidence that I'd never again be in a position where I could be easily discarded. I'd proven that I was indispensable, not just because of what I knew, but because of what I was willing to do to protect that knowledge. The database I'd threatened to delete was worth $3 million, but the lesson Dataflow Solutions learned was priceless. They'd discovered that their most valuable assets weren't stored on servers or in the cloud. They were walking around the office every day, carrying decades of experience and expertise in their heads. And sometimes, when those assets are threatened, they fight back. In the end, I didn't need to delete their database to get my revenge. The mere possibility that I could was enough to change everything. The power had always been in my hands. I just needed to learn how to use it. That was the real victory. And it was worth every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, and every difficult decision along the way. I'd not only gotten justice for myself, but I'd set a precedent that would protect other employees in similar situations. The satisfaction of that realization was better than any 0.3-second deletion could ever be. My revenge was complete, and it had made everyone stronger in the process.